Hi everybody, I wanted to come on here and do another collection video today. This is for one I want to talk about because it's very interesting. It has a special place, a special status as the one system that has completely separated itself from my expectations. That would be the Nintendo Wii. This is one of the three Wii consoles we actually have. Well, the Wii has gotten a lot of use over the years, and I absolutely love the system, but I didn't expect to in any way. As you know, I normally get consoles several years into a generation, typically because then I have a large pool of games to choose from. A lot of launch bugs have been fixed with consoles. There's just more options out there, games are cheaper, and I have a better idea of what I'm going to get for the system, so I'm not really wasting time or money in any way. And that was very true for the Wii. I had owned a 360 and PS3 before then. The Wii, I had played the Wii before, but it was more of party games at a friend's house, maybe like Boom Blocks or Wii Sports or Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. That was kind of my perception of the Wii. And then you also had the just general idea about the Wii, the reputation that it has, I think still has for many people as just this gimmicky motion control system that might have a handful of good first-party games, but overall is just a bunch of crappy shovelware. And when you would go into a store, especially something like a GameStop, I would mostly see stuff like that. And it was harder to find some of the good games, but the Wii has a ton of fantastic games and great exclusives. And the Wii is a system that I decided to go ahead and get around, I think it was 2010, I think it was like summer 2010, somewhere around there. And I really got it because of a couple of games that I knew were coming out. And hopefully in North America you had the whole Project Rainfall thing with Xenoblade Chronicles and The Last Story, and eventually those would come out on the system, and I really wanted the system because of those potential games, and then to just have maybe 2 or 3 other kind of like party games or something Amanda wanted. It wasn't going to be a mainstay system for us, but there was enough just kind of casual fun things that I wanted, and just everything that I saw about this game, which would come out in 2011 over in North America. I had to have this, and yeah, overall it just was something that I thought we'd have a handful of games and then it would just kind of sit there. But over the years, the number of games that I have for the system is 10 times what I normally thought it would be, and this is not a complete collection because there's still a handful of games that I want for the system. Yeah, it was one of those that I thought was going to be 4 or 5 games maybe sitting on the shelf and that's it, but it's actually one of my most played systems and has one of my larger collections. I think it might be my 5th or 6th largest collection. Actually, no, it might be 5th, I think, overall. So yeah, a lot to talk about with the Wii. Again, one I enjoyed so much more than I thought, and leading with the biggest surprise ever, a game that I thought I would enjoy but nowhere near as much as I did. My 2 copies of Xenoblade Chronicles, which, if you follow me at all, you know that is my favorite game of all time, and not one I expected to say anything close to that about, not one I expected to be that high. It just completely took me by surprise and surpassed games that were my favorites for decades at that point, and just became my favorite game ever. You also have The Last Story, which I really enjoyed. I know it's a bit of mixed reception. Some people liked it, some people didn't. It's very different, and I really like the creativity with a lot of the mechanics and just how the game's structured. So it's a very different one. I really wish we would see more from this developer, and of course, The Last Story and stuff like that. But I don't think it will really ever happen, another main game from them. But yeah, I really love this collector's box set of that. And then a couple of the ones that we got pretty early on, bundled with system and things like that. We have the Wii Sports, of course, the little one there, Wii Sports Resort, Wii Fit Plus, kind of some of the generic Wii stuff there, the new Super Mario Bros. Wii, Obscura the Aftermath, which I originally played on the PS2, and no longer had a copy of that, but I found this cheap and it was actually fairly enjoyable. I do like the mechanics in there as far as multiplayer, switching between different character types, and that works well. One that wasn't exclusive, I think was re-released on PS3 for the PlayStation Move, but Dead Space Extraction, which is a fantastic mix of a traditional Dead Space experience with sort of the House of the Dead, a very highly interactive on-rail shooter, I'd say. It's a combination of that, much more interactive than your typical kind of like light gun game like a Time Crisis, but it has that feel for the most part. And speaking of light gun games, I have a couple here because there are a few more that I want for the Wii, because this is one of my favorite systems for those kind of arcade games. It really reminded me in some ways of the kind of stuff you get on the Dreamcast, and one genre that I really have enjoyed, and I have a few more I want for the system, are sort of light gun games, arcade games like that. Ghost Squad, one I really like here. Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, The House of the Dead Overkill, The House of the Dead 2 and 3. Really love this. I really wish the first House of the Dead was also on here. 2 and 3 is great. The first one's still my favorite. Really wish we had that. What was the definitive edition of Resident Evil 4, which I really love, and now it's coming to Switch and things like that, and there are other, obviously, versions of PS4, and it's been released on who knows what else, Resident Evil 4 and everything, but I really enjoyed the upgrade of this from the GameCube version. One that wasn't as much of an upgrade, but I still really enjoyed it, and did not have a GameCube copy, was Resident Evil 0. I'd played it on the GameCube back in the day, did not own it, so I ended up picking up on the Wii. Nights into Dreams. Actually, I have 2 copies of Nights into Dreams because I really enjoyed this. I love the original, this is Journey of Dreams, the original Nights into Dreams on the Saturn. Really love that. So Journey of Dreams, didn't like as much as the original, but I thought was still a very successful follow-up. Really good game. One that was pretty surprising that Amanda got me at one point, but Dragon Quest Swords, The Masked Queen, and The Tower of Mirrors. I liked this. This is one of those examples, and the next one I'm going to talk about here, where the Wii motion controls were actually put to good use, because there are so many games where they are gimmicky and half the time they don't work, and other times where you have a game that maybe is on PS2 and the Wii, or say PS3, Xbox 360 and the Wii version is the same except it has motion controls slapped on and they're terrible. There's so much of that on the Wii you have to dig and find, but there are games that really show the potential and what was promised with the motion controls where it actually works in its favor. It's actually a better game for it. The few and far between as far as examples of games where that really is true, but this is one that works so well. I absolutely love this. It feels, again, sort of like an on-rails shooter, but instead of using the different sword motions for your sword and shield and spells, and it feels like almost a mini Dragon Quest RPG. It has just enough little RPG elements in there that it adds something different to the experience and is a heck of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. This is one of the great, I hate the term, but it really makes sense, one of the great hidden gems for the Wii, something I think we will never ever see ported to anything. I think it's just stuck in obscurity on the Nintendo Wii as an exclusive. I love this game. It has some imperfections. I did a review for it. I'll put that in the description. But Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon. I love this game, and I think more than any other game, it shows when the Wii motion controls and when the Wiimote's abilities are utilized well, it can be a fantastic experience, and this is 100 times better as a game than it would be if it had been released on a system without the motion controls. I really, truly believe that this is like one of the shining examples of like how those can really work in its favor, and this is just an artistic beauty that has some game design elements and some writing issues towards the end of the game that really kind of bring it down a bit, but overall, a great experience. Check out my review of that one. Another Wii exclusive that is a must-buy that I think will be lost here forever, a from the grounds up remake of one of my favorite platformers of all time, and it is fantastic. Klonoa, the remake of the PS1 first Klonoa or Phantom Isle. A brilliant remake and an amazing game. This is a fantastic game that you should pick up whenever you can, because this is one of the few that I feel like is going to start shooting up in price for the Wii over the years. Attack of the Movies 3D, another one of those arcade on-rail shooters there. These are really fun party games. The Wii, I know, gets bashed a lot for having kind of party games and gimmicky things, but these are actually genuinely good and show how that genre can be a lot of fun to sit around with a bunch of people and have a blast. We have Boom Blocks, which is really good, and even better, Boom Blocks Bash Party. Played a lot of this, and those are really fun and are some of the better experiences I've had with the Wii as far as just sitting with friends. And one here that shows the improvement over time with games and developers that really tried to make the motion control aspects work. We have Red Steel, which was a great concept and was a lot of fun, but definitely an imperfect experience, needs some fine-tuning. It got that fine-tuning with Red Steel 2. We have Samurai Warriors 3, which is one of the games that you can also use the GameCube controller. It's one thing I liked about the Wii. If you had the old original white model, you could also just play GameCube games on it, which was great, backwards compatibility, but you could always use the GameCube controller on different models of the Wii for various games that supported it, and it was cool to have those different control options. Many games would be compatible with, say, Wiimote and Nunchuck, or the Wii Pro controller, or the Wii Classic controller, or the GameCube controller. You have so many options for a lot of games. One of the games that I would play at a friend's house many times, and it's just an odd concept if you grew up with, you know, Nintendo versus Sega in many ways, but Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Beijing 2008. A game that I got for, I think it was 50 cents, and yeah, one of those that motion controls really bring it down, but Dragon Blade Wrath of Fire, a budget action game, but when the motion controls decided they wanted to work, it was actually a pretty fun, low budget experience, but it was enjoyable. But then every once in a while they would just refuse to work properly and it would ruin it and it just turn it off. But yeah, the game I got for 50 cents, so I was like, okay, that's good enough for that. Heavenly Guardian, this was pretty fun here. Zack and Wiki, I think this is another one that will eventually go up in price. If you don't have it and you're interested, go ahead and grab it. It kind of reminds me of old point-and-click adventures in many ways, a little more interactive but it's great puzzle solving, fun adventure, very fresh, and really shows the potential of something like the Wii. Something else that's pretty unique, there's also versions of this series on the DS and different lines like that, but Trauma Center, Second Opinion, something just very different. I need to go back and play this because I've only played the first maybe 20 minutes or so just to test it out when I bought this used, and I still haven't gone back and played it. I just haven't had the time, but there's so much negativity around it, but I still really want to check it out. But Tales of Symphonia, Dawn of the New World, I really like Tales of Symphonia, and even though this seems to have an overwhelmingly negative reception by Tales fans, I still really want to play it, and it's one of those on my backlog. I just have not had time. One that was another odd pickup that I think this might be based off a TV show, which I've never seen. I think there are versions of this on the DS or 3DS, which I have no idea what this is in any form except I randomly got it for the Wii, and it's actually far more enjoyable than I expected it to be. But Spectra of Origins, one of those weird random ones that just happened to grab for the Wii that's so much better than I thought. One of my favorite racers ever. I prefer the sequel then, which I have on the Wii U, but this is still fantastic, and as a Sega fan, it is great. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. I also had this on the DS, but I really love playing that on the Wii. And Sega Superstars Tennis. Like a lot of Sega stuff there, a lot of multiplayer things with Sega. Another one, a show that I like the music in the anime, but overall not a big fan of the anime. I prefer the manga, even though the manga is also not perfect, but one that was just kind of surrounded in the fandom and watched a lot of Bleach back in the day, and this is actually a pretty fun fighting game. Again, utilizing those motion controls, it makes it something a little different than some of the other Bleach fighting games that were Japan only on the PSP and PS2. Something a little different, and I think this might have a sequel in Japan on the Wii. I'm not certain, but I think it does. I have a second copy of Ghost Squad because I really enjoyed this. Love playing it in the arcade, and again, any kind of really cool arcade games like that I love to have in the collection to be able to play. Another budget title that was actually a lot of fun, one I got for like $1 or $2, but Counterforce, another one of those cheap budget titles that is actually just a fun arcade game experience, which again, the Wii, it just has tons of those kind of very arcade feeling experiences. It reminded me of what will be coming out in like late 90s, early 2000s on consoles like the Dreamcast or the very beginning of PS2, very end of PS1. The Conduit, I've been looking for the Conduit 2 forever. I've never seen a copy in the store. I just happened to have not seen it. Eventually I have to grab it. But this is really fun, like way more than I thought. And it reminds me of Time Splitters, which that is my favorite first-person shooter series ever, Time Splitters. And this feels closer to that than any other game I've played. And is just an absolute blast, and is surprising how well it works with the motion controls from the first-person perspective. It feels like, in a way, it almost feels slightly more like using the keyboard and mouse on PC like I used to versus a controller for first-person shooter, but again, still a little bit different. But anyway, it works really well, and I've heard Conduit 2 is even better, so I really want to play that. Very, very underrated game, I think, the Conduit, and I think that genre could have been done more with a little more gusto on the Wii. The first-person shooter genre really works when you fine-tune the motion controls, but if you don't quite get those right, it's unplayable. Another one of those kind of goofy minigame things, but Carnival Games Mini Golf, which was surprisingly fun. I'm not usually a fan of the golf-type things or mini-golf games, but Amanda and I actually had fun playing through this one summer. One that Amanda played a lot of, and I have not played at all because I'm not a big fan of the series, but Animal Crossing City Folk wasn't one of her favorites. She didn't like it as much as the 3DS game, I think it's called New Leaf, or the original to North America GameCube game. It was on N64 first, but still good, solid entry in the series. And Onichumbara, the Bikini Zombie Slayers, there's another game that is frequently thought of as it's just a port on 360, but they're actually entirely different games. So if you played the 360 game, for some reason, even on like Amazon listings, I think back in the day, I remember it would just be one listing for both games under the same heading, but they're different games. But this was actually fun with the, again, one of the few examples where the motion controls actually worked fairly well. And this was just goofy, ridiculous fun. I actually first learned of this series. It's been going on for a while in Japan. I know there's a bunch of games on PS2 and PSP, and then you have the Wii and 360, and I think PS4 now at this point. But I actually first discovered this through the movie, which is just absurd. But this is just a fun, very Japanese, very just zombie slaying B-movie action title. Monster Hunter Tri, the only Monster Hunter game I've ever played. Good time with that. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I've always enjoyed the Prime games, and I feel like we'll likely get the trilogy on Switch eventually here. Maybe, it depends, as I'm filming this, that has not been announced, because who knows when I'm going to upload this. Maybe after I upload this, it will have already been announced. But this was, again, a good game, and one that I think used the motion controls well. Tomb Raider Anniversary, love Tomb Raider games, and I thought this was fantastic, and a couple different versions of this that I have. So this was cool with some unique Wii features there. Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings, a really just fun Indiana Jones adventure game, not one of the absolute best Indiana Jones games, but it actually includes as an unlockable one of the best Indiana Jones games. So that one is fun. And another one that was another just kind of cheap pickup I would get every once in a while, just these random Wii games where I'm like, that looks kind of interesting, I'm not certain. Oh wait, it's $1? Sure, I'll go ahead and grab it. And this was actually pretty fun. Tournament of Legends. Not a brilliant fighting game by any stretch of the imagination, but it was far more interesting and fun than I expected it to be, and definitely another fun multiplayer experience. And that's my Wii collection so far. Again, there's still some games I want on the system, but for a system I thought I'd have 3 or 4 games, 5 tops. I have close to 50, and I've enjoyed every one of them that I've played. I have a couple that are still kind of on the backlog, but yeah, definitely a console that took me by surprise, because I just kept finding things that I enjoyed and was not expecting to find so many fun experiences, either odd versions of games that are also on other systems, things like the Tomb Raider Anniversary, some games that were surprising in how much they reminded me of some of my favorite games like the Conduit, other ones like Fragile Dreams that really showed, wow, the motion controls don't have to be gimmicky and stupid. I prefer to have just a controller in my hand most of the time, but when it's done right, it can actually be really cool. And then stuff like Xenoblade just blowing me away and surpassing my absolute favorite games of all time. I mean, I never thought this would challenge things like Final Fantasy IX and Xenogears. I never thought that, and this is still to this day my favorite game ever, and it's just an amazing experience. So yeah, I absolutely love the Nintendo Wii. It is one of my favorite Nintendo consoles, which is odd because before I got it, I thought it would be bottom barrel. I was like, there's no way I'm going to like it as much as previous Nintendo consoles, and this, is just this gimmicky motion control system, but it's actually not. There's a lot of great stuff, and there are dozens of other really good, still exclusive games on the Nintendo Wii. So what are some of your favorite games on the Nintendo Wii if you were a Wii owner, a very Nintendo-focused gamer, or if it was a system that maybe you had the same experience that I did, where you're like, this system's kind of junk. But then you've been uncovering all these games, and you're like, wow, there's some really solid experiences on the Wii. The Wii is a surprisingly good system with a really strong library that exceeds the expectations due to its just the general opinion around the Wii is so negative, but it really has a lot of great stuff, and I think it's thought of in a light that it doesn't deserve. I think it deserves to be remembered as a game system that was different, it was quirky, it tried something new, it tried to be not just a more powerful version of what was next gen, it tried to be something different, and for some cases it worked, some cases it didn't, but it is a fun system, and I absolutely enjoy the Nintendo Wii.